Have you ever wandered into a place where the air feels heavy, where shadows cling to the walls as if they have stories to tell? I have. I've been where darkness doesn't just exist. It breathes. It hungers. Meet Darren and Cora, seasoned urban explorers. They prided themselves on finding hidden relics of the past, forgotten places decaying silently beneath the weight of time. Abandoned factories, husks of mansions, and condemned asylums were their playgrounds. Their latest conquest? An old estate on the edge of town, colloquially known as the Vinewood House. The house itself wasn't notable, apart from its grotesque state of disrepair. Windows shattered like jagged teeth, weeds claiming every inch of the yard. But what lured Darren and Cora wasn't the mansion itself, but the whisper of a locked cellar beneath it. Locals had forbidden entry under vague warnings, murmurs of disappearances, sudden chills peculiar to those who ventured too close. Darren, as always, laughed at such tales. Urban legends are just that, he smirked as they approached the mansion. Armed with high-power flashlights and their camera gear, they filmed the derelict interior. Cora remained quiet, on edge. There was something about Vinewood, not just its emptiness, but the way the silence didn't seem like a lack of sound. It felt deliberate, as if the house was holding its breath. The cellar door, hidden beneath a broken floorboard in the kitchen, emerged just as the rumors hinted. Iron-wrought, ancient, and grotesquely heavy. Darren, with all his bravado, struggled with a crowbar as it screeched against the rusted metal. A long, breathy click echoed as the lock broke. The aged door let out an exhale of air. Was it stale or fresh? Cora couldn't tell, but it crawled under her skin. The single step Darren took into that cellar changed everything. Unlike the dust-covered decrepitude of the mansion, the cellar walls glistened, moist as if alive. Darren had expected debris and mold, certainly not walls streaked with red, thin rivulets oozing downward as if the bricks bled. Yet, always the dismissive one, his curiosity surged. Cora, hesitant, descended carefully behind him. A low hum surrounded them. Was it the pipes? No, there were no pipes. That's when Cora noticed the markings, a language she couldn't recognize, scrawled on every surface. Symbols seemed to ripple, shifting as if aware of their presence, rearranging themselves the longer she stared. "Darren," she whispered, clutching his sleeve, something she never did. "I think we shouldn't be here." But Darren was too engrossed in his discovery. At the base of the cellar, he'd found what appeared to be a stone altar carved intricately with the same symbols. Dark stains covered the grooves, centuries old, yet fresh enough to glisten. It exuded heat, radiating an unnatural pulse like a heartbeat. Darren leaned in closer. That's when it happened. A low growl, not from above, but around them, rumbled, vibrating through the space. The cellar shook with primordial energy. The air pressed against their necks, unyielding and invisible, pinning Cora to a wall. Darren's flashlight flickered, and from the corner of her eye, she saw the shadows grow fingers longer than humanly possible. "We need to leave," Cora screamed, but Darren barely moved. His eyes had locked on the altar, transfixed. And then, a face emerged. Not a human face, but something skeletal, yet swollen, grotesquely incomplete. Its mouth twisted into a grimace of knotted teeth. It phased in and out of existence, as if two images overlaid imperfectly. Cora took a step back, fighting air that had thickened into syrup. She gripped Darren as he leaned against the altar, his hands glued to the surface. His expression gleeful one moment, terrified split second later. The creature spoke, not in words, but in guttural vibrations that penetrated their heads. "Feed or be fed." Darren panicked, his hands moving to detach from the stone, but the altar swallowed them into itself, flesh melting, bones crunching audibly. He screamed, his voice rising until it clipped into silence. Cora froze. She reached forward, but something held her back. The symbols crawling from the walls, forming tendrils that slithered up her legs. "Darren," she begged. The scream died in her throat as Darren's head twisted unnaturally, staring at her while still enveloped by the altar. "Run!" It wasn't another plea. It was an order chased by despair. She didn't hesitate. Forcing herself against the weight, dragging her limbs through the viscous air, Cora stumbled out of the cellar. Behind her, she heard a gushing sound, as if something gargantuan fed ravenously. Darren's cries dissolved into the growling hunger of the dark. The cellar door slammed shut, as if untouched by human hands. Cora ran, slipping onto the lawn, collapsing amidst the tall weeds. The mansion loomed above her like a predator watching its prey. Pale-faced, she fumbled for her keys, leaving every piece of gear behind as she sped down the crumbling driveway. Only after she'd crossed the town's border did she let out a scream, loud and primal. When morning broke, she returned with help. Authorities who ventured inside with flashlights and handguns. No patience for talk of the supernatural. The cellar door was pristine, locked tight, as though no one had touched it for 100 years. Darren was gone. His equipment? Gone too. The mansion itself seemed a touch less decrepit, as though it had been nourished. Cora never urban explored again. Darren was just another name etched on the long ledger of the lost. She didn't need anyone to confirm it. She knew the truth deep down. Somewhere in those depths, in darkness, any light would lose its battle to pierce. Vinewood's cellar still hungers. So, dear listener, if you happen to find yourself near Vinewood's borders, don't go chasing that thrill of proving legends wrong. Just remember, some doors should remain locked, and some appetites can never be sated. Will you face the hunger, or let your curiosity rest? Choose wisely.